Hi, and welcome back to Neural Splendor. Today we're going to talk about the lights on the dash when you key on, and then in particular the engine related lights. That would be the engine stop light, the check engine light, and the OBD light. So let's get to that, and thanks again for joining us at Neural Splendor. This is a 2020 Peterbilt. It has the Eaton Ultra Auto Shift. And here we are at key on. There's a lot of lights on the dash. We're just going to talk about the ones related to the engine. It seems like one of the biggest points of confusion for our drivers are the check engine light versus the OBD light. The check engine light and the OBD light are both yellow. However, they are different looking symbols. In this particular video, the wrench is the check engine light. The outline of the engine is the OBD light. In most vehicles, if you see an outline of an engine and there's no wrench inside of it or no check or the word check, it is just the OBD light. When a check engine light's on, there's an active system issue. The driver can't continue on with his trip. If the driver notices the light goes on and off with operating conditions such as when he's got his foot to the floor asking for power, the light's on. When he lets up, it's off. It may be fuel pressure. It's something related to the engine working hard. Did the OBD light come on as well? If it did, the problems related to the emission systems. There's a lot of items that relate to the emission systems, not just the emission system items, but fuel pressure, boost, timing. A lot of those things relate to that. So a cam pickup sensor fault could cause the OBD light to come on. Times a key cycle, or in other words, a driver pulls off the road to a safe place, shuts the engine down for at least 2 full minutes, and restarts it, the light will be gone. I'll see a lot of turbocharger VGT faults where that happens. And then they go inactive and they stay inactive. And we'll talk about inactive and active faults and time durations in another video, because that is an important thing to know. Next, don't put black tape over the light and drive it forever. You're going to cause big problems. They're going to get bigger as you keep driving it with that light on. I think I'm kidding about the black tape thing, but on the fleet trucks especially, I saw it all the time. And the driver would just say, well, the light never goes off, so I just put tape over it because they told me to drive it. Owner operators, now don't just ignore that check engine light. At least find out what the reason for it is so you know. Next thing, if you key on in the morning when you let the dash wake up and settle down, if that check engine light stays on for 30 seconds after you start the engine, stays on solid and then goes out, that's a maintenance related item, like maybe the DPF needs to be changed, something like that. You can get someone to scan your faults for that. In this case, our check engine light was the picture of the wrench. If the wrench goes out, but the outline of the engine stays on, that's the OBD light. Now I'm going to address what that means. What is the OBD light? It's a timer. It's a software watchdog. It watches anything that affects emissions. If you have a light come on for fuel pressure, which affects emissions, it will stay on for 3 trips. What is a trip? One trip is 4 hours or more of running without that fault coming active. If you run 3 hours and it comes active for a couple minutes and goes out, well, you start all over. You got to do another 4-hour trip. So if we have fuel pressure faults and we stop and get our filters changed at the end of an 8-hour run, we've had 2 trips with it on, but if it came on again at 7 hours and 30 minutes, we're going to have 3 trips again. So the OBD light will be on. The OBD light, when it's on, does not cause a derate. It remembers derate strategy and picks it right back up where it left off if the fault happens again. And by that I mean comes active. So while the fault's active, if you were in stage 2 of a derate, which would be torque and speed derate, you're going to go right back to that, from running fine to bang, a big derate. The last stage of derate, if you get there, which is 5 miles an hour or just idling, you're done. You have to get the engine recalibrated, the software recalibrated to drive that out. That's forcing you to go to a shop. If, let's say it's a fuel pressure fault, you're driving, the light comes on, the OBD light comes on, which is the outline of the engine, that's the OBD light, but your wrench went out. In this case, it's a wrench. It went out. There's no fault. So the OBD light's on, the world's good, everything's running great. If you stop and get your fuel filters changed and that was the problem, and the check engine light doesn't come on anymore, the OBD light will stay on for approximately a day, 3 trips, and then it'll go off and it's over. And the OBD light in and of itself, if there's no fault lights on with it, does not mean there's a problem. It doesn't mean you have to stop. You don't have to do anything. The example of the fuel filters, you got them changed and the problem was fixed. The OBD light will stay on until it times itself out. It goes out and forget it ever happened. There's not going to be a fault showing the OBD light was on. The fault code itself will show that it does drive the OBD light, but the OBD light in and of itself causes no derates. It just remembers. It's a timer. So you can drive and continue on with your trip if that light is on. I get a lot of calls from drivers. There's always confusion about what's the difference between the check engine light and the OBD light. I've had guys stop trips because the OBD light was on when they really didn't need to. So I wanted to let you drivers know the difference between those lights and the people that the drivers might call if the light comes on to give them some help. It's a complex world today in the truck, and the last thing people want to do is damage something that costs $150,000 and then you can't use the machine till it's fixed, and on we go. So again, OBD light, just keep on driving. Check engine light, you're going to have to get it checked, see what's going on. Stop engine light, get off the road safely, shut the engine off, figure out what's going on. Drivers, when those lights come on, always look down at your water temperature, oil pressure, your other gauges that relate to your different systems. The truck has its own warning systems for over temperatures on a transmission and things like that. That's out of the scope of this video. Hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for subscribing to Neural Splendor. Subscribe. I'll have lots of good stuff up for you. And we'll see you next time. Have a good day.